Hello, Noel T. Man II, hanging out with Douglas Davidson. That's right, Double D, D2, my good buddy from Elements of Madness. Always good to see you. Always good to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And man, you're going to talk about a film and a franchise that I've loved. I've loved the Rocky Creed franchise, the Rockyverse, going back 4+ decades, which is pretty amazing when you think about this 9 films, including Creed 3, which you're going to give us your take on. And you know, in this day and age, we are so used to so many films like, you know, Fast and Furious 512. I mean, we're used to that. We're used to that kind of stuff. But what's different about the Rocky franchise is, you know, these sequels were coming out not at the time that people expected to see sequels. There were some, of course. There were, you know, the Jaws and the Godfathers, and of course the Planet of the Apes franchise at that time during the late '60s and '70s. But Rocky was one of those that flew under the radar. It was a truly an indie film when it came out, and it was the box office smash for that year. Ended up becoming, you know, kind of the Oscar darling and one that everybody kind of went to. Spawned this incredible franchise that lasted through the 80s, especially. We saw a lot of them. Oh, yeah. Some good, some not so good. And when it wrapped up with Rocky Balboa, we thought that's the end of this.
We're done.
Well, then when you have kind of this interesting spin-off with the son of Creed taking a whole new trilogy and bringing it to life, I thought, wow, how brilliant is that if you can pull it off? And I got to tell you, the first 2 films I felt really pulled it off with heart, with some nostalgia and a little bit more as well. And so really interesting to hear your take, really interested to hear your take on Creed 3, because it's probably one of the films that I've been looking forward to the most. And I know we're just in February, but I've been looking forward to this one for a long time.
When earlier in late 2022, but earlier, meaning a few months ago, my podcast co-host, Daryl Menzel, who comes on the show quite a bit as well, we did a show talking about our anticipated winter movies. Creed 3 is on that list. And what's fascinating is that when I was growing up, I enjoyed Rocky, but I didn't love Rocky. My favorite out of the ones that I'd seen, born in 1980, was Rocky 4. Rocky 5 with Tommy the Machine Gun. It has a couple of moments, but I agree with you. Rocky Balboa, Rocky 6 was fantastic, and it was a beautiful way to end the series. So when I heard that they were making a spinoff with Creed, following Adonis Creed, I wasn't interested at all. I went, why do we need to tell this story? What could there possibly be? And then I saw it.
Yeah.
And what an incredible movie that Ryan Coogler directing, Michael B. Jordan starring as Adonis Creed. What an incredible film. And it found a way to naturally expand the universe. So when we say, why did it need to be made? Because there were stories to tell.
Yes.
There were actual stories to tell. And with that first film, for those of you that haven't seen it, it's about Adonis reclaiming his name. Instead of running away from being a Creed, being the son out of marriage that Apollo had, he found a way to take his name back. And, you know, of course, you do Creed, the follow-up, Victor Drago's son, the two of them are going to go head-to-head. Yeah. I mean, how exciting as a direct sequel, rather than just being we've got the children of, so let's see what they're doing. No, there's actual emotional tension there. And the story that they created to go with that, Ryan Coogler didn't direct that one. He just produced it, but Michael B. Jordan returned again to star as Adonis, and they went places that were utterly surprising. Right. And for our basic understanding at the time, Stallone was done with Rocky, with that film, and the way that they shoot his final moments really suggest that passing of the torch. Yeah. Well, now we have Michael B. Jordan not only playing Adonis Creed, but moving into the director's chair with Creed 3.
For the first time ever. This is his directorial debut.
This is a directorial debut, not with some indie, and Jordan came up really, I mean, he'd done some studio pictures. I was reminded last night he did Hardball with Keanu Reeves and Diane Lane when he was a wee lad. But he sort of came up with the indie crew. I think was it like Short Room 12 with Brie Larson and a few other folks. So he'd sort of done Fruitville Station, which he did with Coogler.
Yes.
The fact that he decided with Creed 3 that not only was there a story to tell, but he wanted to be the one behind the camera. There's a story there, I'm sure. But let me tell you, folks, he's been paying attention.
Wow.
He has been paying attention as an actor to see what's been going on, and he does things as a storyteller that make Creed 3, which is sort of a even more stripped down, more character-focused drama that involves boxing than I think we've had so far. In the previous 8 films, this is the one I think most tight on character. And
Wow.
he does some stuff as a director which, when we get to the boxing, is quite impressive. And I'm not saying that in sort of a hyperbolic, hype this up because I loved the film. I can't discuss it without getting into spoilers, but the big fight that happens, because before jumping into that, this film centers on Adonis reconnecting with an old friend played by Jonathan Majors, who is having an incredible moment in cinema right now between his Sundance film of Magazine Dreams and then, of course, Kang the Conqueror in the MCU this year. He's having a heck of a 2023. But he plays a gentleman by the name of Damien, who had been friends with Adonis as a young kid. The two of them run into some trouble. Damien ends up going to prison for about 18 years. Adonis does not. And so it becomes about two friends on diverged paths. And it's a story about you want to follow your dreams, but what happens when life doesn't turn out the way that you expect? And can you go down the path that you want? And what are you willing to do to either keep that dream or attain it? And so it's a film about these sort of two brothers and coming back together after an extended absence and butting heads.
Wow.
And so we know from the marketing, and you know because it's a Creed film in the Rocky verse, things have to be settled in the ring. And the way that Jordan gets us in the ring, in the fights throughout the film, I think not only gets the audience into the action, but also helps us get into the minds of the boxers, particularly our primary boxers that we're following, Damien and Adonis. Boxing, while I've never done it, as I understand it, is a mental thing as much as physical. It's about knowing yourself and knowing who you're fighting. And Damien proves to be the sort that does his homework and knows exactly who he's fighting. Wow. And that comes into some really fascinating moments in the film in terms of inserting drama and tension. Yeah. So not only do we have these great performances, but Jordan is capturing them wonderfully. And I think it's important to note that, one, this film was written by Keenan Coogler. His previous writing credit was Space Jam: A New Legacy, which I liked. I know a lot of people didn't, but I liked. And co-written by Zach Balin, who also did King Richard. So you've got those writing credits. Coogler is the producer. Jordan behind the camera. You've got the returning cast: Felicia Rashad, Tessa Thompson, Wood Harris, the actor who played Victor Drago. He comes back. I love how he comes back. Okay. There's a lot of familiar faces. Yeah. But what's great about the movie is that you've got all of that good stuff, and you've got the fighting, but they bring them together in a way that tells this story that you wouldn't expect. Wow. And the fact that this universe of Creed stories keeps finding ways to sort of break away from legacy sequels, from reboots, remakes, and actually has a story to tell is what is truly fascinating. And I think fans of the previous two films will really enjoy what's going on here.
That's pretty amazing because to me, this film had every chance to fail.
Yes.
When you look at Michael B. Jordan, of course, we know what he can do in front of the camera. We know what kind of talent he is there, and we know that he's been in the industry for a while. But when you are taking on your first film as director, and one that all eyes will be on, this is not an indie darling that a handful of critics are going to be able to see, and then they'll talk about during the award season. This is one of those that the anticipation is for this to be a big box office kind of film.
Yeah.
So with that, it's beyond just the critics who are looking at this. It's those who would go to see a Top Gun legacy sequel. Those are the ones, and of course the ones that have liked boxing films and things like that, and have watched these films. But something I find interesting is I've talked to several people who may have only seen one Rocky film and one of the Creed films, but said, I really want to see this. And to me, I find that really interesting, because you typically do not see that with films that are part of a franchise. Most people want to see kind of all of these in between before they get to it. And I find that interesting. And are you hearing some of that same kind of thing with just the buzz of just general people out there?
I have not heard that specifically, but I understand it, because after watching Creed 1 and 2, it had been forever since I'd seen the Rocky films. And I watched those, and I went, I want to go back. I want to go back and watch the Rocky films, because the way that Coogler tells the story in the first film, you get everything that you need to know. Yes. So you can come into it with Creed and then go backwards. And it doesn't necessarily ruin anything in the franchise. Does cast a shadow, of course, over the first four films. Yeah. But you can, I think with these films, they stand on their own. And if people came to them, unlike, say, as you were talking about it, you can't go to Fast 8 and understand everything that happens. You sort of, you can enjoy it, certainly. Yeah. But with the mythology that they've created, you sort of have to see these other films in order to understand their significance. Yeah. But with Creed, you can jump in there. What was that?
Avengers Endgame. You can't just show up for that one.
No, you'll really lose out on a lot of the emotionality with that one.
Or for that matter, many of the Marvel films that we're seeing now, there's so many of them that are built on previous knowledge that you can come in and get lost. I'm not going to talk about Antman and Wasp, Quantumania, because I've got my own feelings for that, but that one's not one that I'm having a lot of rewatchability drawing. I'm not being drawn back to that movie multiple times like I would for Rocky films, for example, or Creed films.
This one, I definitely am excited for a rewatch, particularly because Jordan is for those of you that follow him in the news, he is a big nerd. And when I say big nerd, he's a big anime fan specifically. And for example, the rumor has it that the outfit that Killmonger, the character he played in the first Black Panther, that he wears when he goes into the throne room is designed after the character Vegeta in the Dragon Ball Z series, that it was done specifically at his request. There is a moment he's talked about in Creed 3 that the way that it's shot and executed is directly taken from anime. And when you think about it that way, the approach that he takes to the story and the fact that it's a story of two people that should really just be having a conversation, but instead are fighting, when you look at that through the same lens of the way that anime tells stories, there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on there. And there's a lot that happens in this movie that I think people want to go back and see. Now, something to keep in mind, this is the shortest of all the Creed movies. With credits, it's under 2 hours. With credits, it's under 2 hours. This thing moves super fast. And honestly, there's some moments where it's almost too fast, where it skips over a couple of things. There is an absence of Stallone in the movie that is felt. Okay. And the only explanation I can give for that is they were trying to tell such a small, intimate story focused on Adonis and what he's doing, that to bring in Rocky would be like a parent coming in to deal with a child versus having them stand on their own, which is a lot of what this is.
Interesting.
So I will say the screening that I attended, which MGM was wonderful to set up, we were in a standard theater. This film is reportedly shot in IMAX. I was on the edge of my seat. I was in it. I can't imagine what it would be like to see it in IMAX. So if you're considering, if you're super excited for Creed 3, you're thinking about which version to go for, it was shot in IMAX, but I was locked in my standard theater.
Well, that's great to know that it translates no matter what type of screen you're watching this on.
Oh, yeah.
Probably enhanced more if you're able to go to IMAX. I would love to see this in a 4DX. Where the seats are doing this, when you're getting punched. That would
Jonathan
be awesome.
Majors is a big dude. He'll take your jaw off. Like he'll swing, and that thing will slap you, and you're done.
So we've got Killmonger versus Kane the Conqueror. That's a great matchup in the boxing ring. Well, Majors is just amazing, and I've loved him for a long time. He had a pretty decent year last year, as you said. This year, starting off even better. Yeah. Final thoughts and comments you want to make sure you share that you get out there.
I would simply say that it is different than the other films, and not in a bad way. And it's something that I think shows growth for these stories. Reportedly, Jordan is already planning to do a fourth, whether that's in the director's chair and in front, or just in front of the camera. But I would be fine to see another movie.
Okay.
With this film, there's opportunities. This is not This is not Rocky III Clubber Lang. This is its own thing, and which suggests that they could find material to tell more stories.
Interesting. Okay, awesome. Well, what is your rating for Creed 3 that you can find actually in theaters March 3rd? So pretty early screening we got a chance to check out here.
Solid A. Absolutely solid A.
Awesome. Solid A rating for Creed 3. And we appreciate you, Douglas, for spending time with us. It's great. A lot of good stuff here. And I hope anybody out there who is a fan of the Rockyverse has appreciated this, because in the future, and probably in a few weeks, we're going to be doing a special looking at the entire Rockyverse and doing a kind of a countdown as well. So I'm excited about that. Thomas is going to join me. He's doing some homework, some research. If he can wake up, he's planning to do that. So Douglas, people can find you in several places. Go ahead and throw out those locations.
Well, the best place to find me is elementsofmadness.com, and from there you can find all the socials for Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, things of that nature. And by the way, Warner Brothers is releasing, as part of their 100-year celebration, if I remember right, the first 4 Rocky films in 4K, just in time for Creed 3. So if you are interested in doing that will come available. And certainly after watching Creed 3, I kind of do want to revisit 4.
Awesome. Well, Douglas, always appreciate you spending time with us. And for those who are joining us, stick around after this quick intermission. We're going to come back. And Thomas is awake. He had an interview earlier this week with Kathryn Newton from the Antman, Quantumania, Antman and Wasp, Quantumania film. And so he's going to give us that interview, and we may even have time for another interview. We'll see. After this quick intermission. Thanks, Douglas.
Thank you.
We'll be right back after this break.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch it?
His name is Sylvester Stallone. He's the star of a new film called Rocky. He's been described as tough, handsome, talented, sexy, sensitive, dynamic, brilliant. He's been compared to Nicholson, De Niro, and Brando, but he is Rocky. He's the man who could be loved by only one woman, because somehow she gets beneath the pain. He's every nobody who ever needed somebody.
Rocky, do you believe that America is the land of opportunity?
Yeah.
I'll break both your arms so they don't work for you.
He's every man who ever settled for something less.
What about my pride, Nick? At least you have pride. I ain't had no pride. I ain't had nothing. I want to get that. I want to get that.
Terrific. I mean, you could be a heartbreak. You walk down the street breaking hearts the way you're looking. Very sharp.
He's the man who never had a chance until now. Rocky. His whole life was a 1,000,000-to-1 shot. His name is Sylvester Stallone, but you will always remember him as Rocky.
Come and meet me at the movies. Won't you come and watch a flick?
Hello, welcome back to Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T. Manning II here. Appreciate you spending time with us, and thanks to Douglas Davidson for taking his time to give us really a wonderful, in-depth review of Creed 3 and his thoughts behind it, and even the excitement that he would have for a fourth installment. That's saying something about that movie. He gave that an A rating. Thomas and I are going to give our take on that in a couple weeks, along with an exploration of the Rockyverse as a whole. But today, I wanted to make sure we got that review in place, but also really wanted to be able to share with you an interview that Thomas had a chance to do earlier this week with Kathryn Newton from the Antman and Wasp Quantumania film. And I'm going to take you to this interview. I think you're going to find it fascinating. Thomas did such a wonderful job and had a lot of fun with it as well. So let's roll that in.
Hi, and welcome into Meet Me in the Movies Open Dialogue. I am Thomas Manning, and today I'm very excited to be sharing with you my recent conversation with actress Kathryn Newton, talking about her role in the film Antman and the Wasp Quantumania, in which she plays Cassie Lang, who is Ant-Man's daughter. This was a really fun discussion. It was actually the first time I've gotten to talk to someone specifically about an MCU project, so we had a lot of fun with that. Kathryn's had an incredible career already. She's only 25 years old, but she has credits to her name, such as 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri. Also, she was in the horror comedy Body Swap comedy a few years ago with Vince Vaughn called Freaky. And also, she was in a really charming sci-fi rom-com called The Map of Tiny Perfect Things. So, always interested to see what new projects Kathryn is working on. And this was a great discussion. Thank you so much for watching and tuning in. Hope you enjoy.
Hi, Thomas.
Hey, Kathryn, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, I'm doing wonderful. I really appreciate you taking the time for this, and I'm very excited to be talking with you about Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. And I have to say, you're building up a pretty impressive resume of on-screen parents across different projects you've worked on, from Frances McDormand to Julia Roberts, Reese Witherspoon, and now Paul Rudd. And obviously each of these are from very different stories and genres, but is there anything you learned from those previous relationships with your on-screen parents that you applied to your role in Quantumania?
Absolutely. And hearing you say those names, I feel like, first of all, I feel so honored that I got to work with them, but I also feel like grandfathered in somehow, like they've welcomed me and brought me up and showed me the reins of what it takes to be not only a great actor, which I'm still working on, but they're also really great leaders and listeners. But from the beginning, I think I've been training for a role like Cassie Lang since I was 4. You know, every project leads up to the next project, and I felt like I was finally ready, and it definitely had a lot to do with working with the legends that you mentioned. They were all very generous, and the main thing was they all wanted me to do well. They all wanted me to shine. Nobody ever wanted me to hold back or be small. And I think that's the biggest thing is Paul Rudd wanted me to shine. He wanted me to take up space. He wanted me to try things. And that was a gift. So Paul, thank you for helping me. And I think you can feel it in this movie that I didn't hold back, and I definitely had fun.
Oh, most definitely. That really does shine through in your performance. And a few years ago, you were in a movie called Freaky, and your character there basically switches bodies with a serial killer played by Vince Vaughn. So when you look at the characters in Quantumania, which body swap situation between Cassie Lang and another character do you think would make for the most interesting dynamic?
Definitely Veb. Have you seen the movie? Do you know who I'm talking about?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. David Dastmalchian's new character, I believe.
He's going to be my favorite character for a very long time. I think that would be funny. I love a lot of the characters that we meet in the quantum realm, but Veb specifically, for me as a fan, those are the characters that I fall in love with in these Marvel universes. Because like it's like the Wizard of Oz, like going to Oz and meeting the lions and the tigers and the bears. Like these are new people to fall in love with, and I just love Veb. So I would totally swap bodies with Veb.
Well, I would pay good money to see that. I'm sure many other people would as well. And, another thing that I love about the Antman and the Wasp movies is that in each of the three we've had so far, there's some element of a heist involved in the narrative, which of course makes sense given Scott Lang's background. So within this epic universe of the MCU with all these incredible characters and brilliant actors, who would you like to see Cassie Lang team up with for a grand heist adventure?
Oh, well, I will always pick Ant-Man, but for a heist, I think her and Groot could really get up to something, because they both get really big and really small. But I like to joke that this movie is like a father-daughter road trip. So we have had the heist movies, but now we have a father and a daughter reconnecting on a road trip. Just a family road trip through the quantum realm. Casual, fun, memories that'll last a lifetime.
No doubt, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of interesting things you could do between your character and Groot, but yeah, I love how you say that this is a road trip movie. That's a really beautiful way of putting that, and the character of Cassie Lang is a very culturally aware individual, and she cares about a lot of very important issues in the society that she lives in, but I also get the feeling that she has a lot of general pop culture knowledge as well in terms of movies and music and television. So, hypothetically speaking, if Paul Rudd, the actor himself, happens to exist in the MCU, how do you think Cassie feels about Paul Rudd, the actor?
I think she'd love Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd's the everyman, and I think Cassie Lang is the every girl. She's like everybody. I think that's what makes these characters, specifically Ant-Man, so relatable, is they're just like everybody else. And Paul Rudd, when you see Paul Rudd on the street, he's just like Ant-Man in the movies. Like, that's who he is. And I do kind of feel like Cassie Lang is who I am, but I think she's written that way, and I hope anyone who sees this movie, whether you're a boy or a girl or a teenager or an adult or an 8-year-old, can see who Cassie Lang wants to be. And she's a lot like her dad. She wants to impress him, and I do think Cassie Lang would be a fan of Paul Rudd, because I'm a fan.
I love that. I love that. Well, I really do appreciate your time today, Kathryn. It was an honor to be able to speak with you about Quantumania, and looking forward to your future projects, and hopefully we get a chance to speak again sometime.
I'd love that. Thank you so much.
Thanks to Kathryn Newton for being our guest here. Thomas, great interview. Thanks for taking the time to do that. And thanks again to Douglas Davidson as well, as we offered you a review, an early review of the movie Creed 3, which will be in theaters on March the 3rd. So until next time, for C19 TV, for WGWG.org, and for all the cast and crew right here at Meet Me at the Movies, I'm Noel T. Manning II, and for this week, yo, that's a wrap, Adrian.
Many films to view until we meet again. Next time we see you, we'll gladly fill you in. We'll tell about the happy and the sad ones. We'll talk about the good ones and the bad ones. Many films to view till we meet again.